Over the last 2 years, the pandemics brought the Philippines to a standstill. Its battered and once surging economy left millions locked up for months, and it's fueled a boom in unintended pregnancies.
During the course of 2020, we saw between 40 to 60,000 births among minors.
Kung walang pandemic, hindi po ako siguro mabubuntis.
With the healthcare service stretched paper thin, this surge brings hidden dangers.
Magkano na po pinabenta yung anak niyo? 10,000. 10,000, papaampon mo na yung bata.
What's the true cost of the rise in unwanted pregnancies in the Philippines? And who pays the price for this pandemic baby boom?
Manalangin tayo para sa pagbagasgas. Mahal na po ang Jesus Nazareno, inihiyag mo sa pamamagitan ng
The Church of Black Nazarene in Manila. Women once left aborted fetuses in front of the church doors in the hope of saving their innocent child's soul. But ironically, just by these doorsteps is what's known as abortion market. Bitter concoctions and herbs promising to induce abortions are sold openly. But that's not all that's available. We send someone in undercover.
Maganda. Sandal mo. Eksakto na yan? Yeah, 1,000 okay. Oh, tagal mo na kasi hindi pumupunta. Meron na? Okay na? Okay na. Salamat na, oy.
Within minutes, our undercover plant is sold a pack of pills.
Nakabili po ako ng gamot na cytotic na ginagamit po sa panlaglag. Pag ordinaryong tao po, hindi po agad-agad nakakabili kasi po pinagbabawal nga po ito.
In 2009, the Philippines Food and Drug Administration banned the purchase and use of misoprostol. It's a drug used to induce abortion. But near the Church of Black Nazarene, abortion pills are traded covertly. And since the start of the pandemic, business has never been better. For women unable to venture outside for abortion pills, social media is providing an easy solution. Since the pandemic started, there's been a spike in online sellers advertising door-to-door deliveries. And if the pills aren't enough, massagers from helots or traditional midwives offer a final shot at abortion. Marika works covertly, helping women end their pregnancies.
Umabot na po ng 20 years po. Ginagawa ko yung ganito. Nung nakakaraan din naman po pandemic, taga may lumalapit naman po. Natulungan ko po. Para bang ang ganda mong buhay na mano.
3 na yung anak ko, tapos pang-4 yung sa tiyan ko. Kasi silang wala na talaga akong balak magbuntis. Nalaman ko nung buntis ako at magtatatlong buwan na. Tatay yun, hindi naman po na ano, hindi po niya alam yun. Hindi ko sinabi sa kanya, hindi ako papayagan, palaglag ko na lang.
Itong 8 na to, anak ko lahat yan. Tapos nasa unahan, asawa ko tsaka ako. Bali 10 kami sa loob ng bahay. Pag akyat sa taas, may mezzanine siya. Yung 4, nandun sa mezzanine. Yung pinakamaliit, nasa duyan.
"34-year-old Hershey Gonzalez lives in Happy Land. It's one of the most densely populated and impoverished slums in Manila. After the birth of their 8th child, baby Eliza, Hershey and her husband Leonardo decided they must stop.
Nung pagkapanganak ko po sa pang-8 anak ko, nag-pills po ako kasi ayoko na pong manganak. Ayoko nang manganak kasi napakahirap po ng buhay namin ngayon.
Kung 2 bata lang po yung anak, mabibigyan ko po sila ng magandang buhay. Dumami po, kaya medyo nahihirapan na rin po ako. Maaray na rin po ako sa hirap. Parang nabaon na po kami na sa hirap ng buhay ngayon.
Kakain ka? Sige na, kain na kayo.
Wala ako. Napal.
After her last birth, Hershey relied on oral contraceptive pills. But a box of 28 pills sells for $14 US. That's double what Leonardo can earn in a day. Fortunately, Hershey gets a free supply of 3 boxes from village health workers every 3 months. But in early 2020, everything changed.
Upon further study of worldwide trends and measures and the need of extreme caution during such time as this, I have come to the conclusion that stricter measures are necessary. I am placing the entire mainland of Luzon under quarantine until April 2020.
Noong March 2020 po, nagsimulang mag-lockdown dito sa Metro Manila. Mahigpit po. Talagang bawal lumabas. Nakakatakot din pong mahawa ng COVID eh. Lalo na po sa akin, puro bata po yung kasama ko sa loob ng bahay.
To counter the viral spread, the Philippines began one of the world's strictest lockdowns. All movement was restricted. As guards patrolled the streets, businesses shuttered. Medical centers ran reduced services. Public transportation ground to a halt. And workers stayed at home. Manila became a ghost town.
Being a family planning reproductive health clinic, all of our services were affected, impacted by the lockdown. Yeah, one of the challenges was, of course, finding transportation because our clinics do not have their own vehicles. They rely on public transportation. Our clients cannot avail of their monthly resupply, for example, pills, or those who are using injectables. They have to access those services from our clinics regularly. So during the lockdown, they cannot just access those services. So some of them have to stop using contraceptives that they used to get.
This is Metro Manila, 8 months after the lockdown. Health centers across the country were finally able to provide family planning information and services to communities. They could once again conduct house-to-house visits and fulfill resupply requests for various forms of birth control. But over 15 months during the pandemic, such services were derailed. The lockdown might have reduced the spread of COVID-19, but it blocked the mobility of these healthcare providers and their clients. Likewise, women who needed these services couldn't make their way to the health centers. Many women saw their birth control supplies run dry.
people stay at home, especially during this pandemic, they will really be very sexual. They will exercise their sexual activities more often if a husband and wife cannot even afford buying a condom. And they do a lot of sexual activities to pass the time or out of boredom. Chances are that the woman may get pregnant.
Lockdowns were 100% all over the country for 9.5 months, from March to December of 2020. In a survey that we did, 60 to 70% of women, their major problem during the pandemic was unplanned pregnancies.
An extra 214,000 unintended babies were born in 2021 all over the Philippines. That's an increase of 13% from the year before. These children were born in a nation already overwhelmed by 1.5 million births a year. "33-year-old Mafil Harupay is determined to battle the pandemic's threat to family planning.
Ay, be! Ano na? Kamusta naman? Max, akin na yung niya, yung pills niya. Ito yung pills mo. Good for 3 months yan. Pag naubos, chat ka lang ulit, ha?
The moment restrictions were eased, Mafil applied for a special pass. She spent the next 5 months delivering free birth control to a local community. All the pills were donated by private companies.
Ngayon, di ba, COVID ngayon, mahirap magbuntis, hindi natin alam kung plano. Oo, kaya mahalaga din na napaklano natin yung pagbubuntis.
Marami ditong nabuntis. Talagang nabuntis sila dahil sa panahon ng pandemya. Walang trabaho yung mga asawa, laging magkasama.
So, ang family planning naman kasi, hindi lang siya tungkol sa contraceptive. So, pagpaplano siya ng pamilya. Kung kailan mo balak manganak, at kung kailan mo hindi mo na gustong manganak. Ilang taon uli ang pahinga bago magbuntis uli?
3.
Having no access to contraception can have tragic consequences.
Sinisi ko po yung sarili ko kasi bakit ko ginawa yung ganun, sobrang bata ko pa po. Ate, may pills po kayo?
Meron po. Anong brand po?
Lady pills po.
Ilang taon na kayo?
15 po.
Sorry hindi kami nagbibenta ng pills sa minor de edad eh.
Okay po. Sige po ate, salamat.
Salamat po.
It's illegal for teenagers to buy contraceptives from drugstores without parental consent. Prior to the pandemic, teenagers could still get contraceptives from either government health centers or from community health workers. These sources, which generally come with contraceptive counseling, don't require parental consent. But with the disruption in these services, Marjorie's supply dried up. And now, at the tender age of just 15, Marjorie is the mother of a 4-month-old baby. Marjorie represents a chronic problem in the Philippines that's been exacerbated by COVID-19 lockdowns. In 2020, it's estimated that 18,000 teenagers ended up getting pregnant due to the reduction of family planning services during the community quarantine.
Kung walang pandemic. Hindi po ako siguro mabubuntis kasi puro lang po mga gagawin ko lang po mga schoolworks, pag dito, paglinis sa mga bahay. Kasi po na-boring po ako, kaya po ako nabarkada. Nabuntis po ako ng maaga.
The lockdowns meant schools shuttered for over 600 days, and education programs were put on hold. While learning moved online, teenagers like Marjorie found themselves with more time on their hands.
It is very risky for these teenage adolescent mothers because most of them are at risk of having anemia, sometimes with gestational diabetes, preeclampsia or hypertension. And for those infants, they tend to have low birth weight. Mentally will make them depressed, especially taking care of a young infant. They sometimes commit suicide. And sometimes it's not only themselves that are in danger, they also try to kill the infant because it's deemed a burden to them.
There are two types of boot sa computer. A hard boot is when the power is completely up to the system in question and starting the machine.
Since giving birth, Marjorie juggled schoolwork with taking care of a 4-month-old daughter.
Mahirap po. Minsan po kasi anong oras na po siya natutulog, napupuyat po ako. Tapos gagawa pa po ako ng mga module ko. Minsan po konti lang tulog ko, tapos kailangan po gawin yung mga module ko kasi graduating.
The burden of caring for the child is so great. Many times you don't have support, you don't have parent support. It's a very heavy job of actually rearing a baby. It means that a lot of young people are dropping out from school. And once you drop out, it's hard to get back. The internal demands of parenthood at that very young age is so great that even if you had that enabling community around, your teachers, probably your friends, etc., it's difficult task.
Basta po patuloy lang yung pag-aaral ko. Kasi po para sa anak ko, yun lang po. Para sa kanya din naman po yung pag naging teacher ako. Mahirap yung pagdadaanan pero kakayanin ko po. Kasi kailangan talaga.
But in order for Marjorie to continue schooling, Jerson, the father of her baby, had to drop out.
Hindi na po makakain. Sana makapagtapos po sila ng dalawang pag-aaral po. Pag-aaralin ko po siya.
Jerson is only 17 years old, and he tries to make money with odd jobs.
Ang trabaho ko ngayon ay batilyo. Nag-ahatak po na banya-banya isda po. Nag-ano na po ng trabaho po. Nag-iipon-ipon na po pera. Ang mahirap sa pagiging tatay, todo kayod po. Mapagod po, tas puyat, dagdadoble.
The country already has the second highest teen pregnancy rate in Southeast Asia. It's estimated that during the pandemic, teenage pregnancies rose by almost 22%. Inadequate sex education and a lack of access to birth control, coupled with no school and spending more time around their peers, led to a surge in unprotected teen sex. The Philippine Education Department had planned to launch a new sex education curriculum, but the rollout was derailed by COVID-19.
If a lot of our young people get pregnant early and they get stuck in child rearing, child bearing, our economy will really be affected because we will not be able to have more stable income or profit from our employment industry.
Kung hindi po ako nabuntis, sana pa rin po, patuloy po ng pag-aaral. ini-enjoy lang yung pagkadalaga. Tapos, ano po, ito pa rin yung pangarap ko. Sinisi ko po yung sarili ko kasi bakit ko ginawa yung ganun, sobrang bata ko pa po.
Kinabahan po. Na baka ganun nga, magalit yung pamilya sa akin. Na bata pa, nabuntis ko na. Tapos nung bandang uli na po, tanggap na po nila. Basta magtrabaho lang daw po ako.
During the course of 2020, we probably saw between 40 to 60,000 births among minors. The problem then is if you cannot get a family planning method, it's a 10% chance for these adolescents to get pregnant again.
For decades, the Philippines have struggled with rapid population growth. Its population more than doubled since the 1980s. Up to 1980, the Philippine population was similar in size to Thailand's. But 40 years on, it is now at least a third larger than its ASEAN neighbor. Access to birth control has always been a complicated issue in the Philippines. For years, advocates and lawmakers struggled to pass a law promoting the use of modern contraceptives. However, the church and like-minded opponents stalled its legislation.
Kapag tayo halimbawa ay nagsasalita ng tungkol sa ating pananampalataya, kami-kami ng putakti ng kritisismo ang hinahanin natin.
Reverend Father Jerome Siciliano is one of the leading voices against the law to promote the use of contraceptives.
The teaching of the Catholic Church is only about natural family planning. So when we say artificial methods, we view this as against the natural process of procreation. The artificial methods of family planning are also not 100% effective. Even those using condoms, for example, turned out to be pregnant. Even those using pills also turned out to be pregnant.
The Church's stand on birth control held sway for many years in the Catholic-majority country. But in 2017, all legal roadblocks were finally lifted. Even long-term contraceptions, including hormonal implants and IUDs, could be given out free to everyone. All of this is part of the Responsible Parenthood and Reproductive Health Act, or RPRH, which is envisioned as a means to slow the nation's population growth.
The major impact of the RPRH law is that it has made it a policy that the Philippine government, the state, will provide universal access to family planning and other reproductive health services. At the start of the implementation of the law, there were 4 million Filipino women using modern family planning methods. By the end of 2020, it had doubled to 8 million.
But the pandemic struck, and all the hard-earned gains were suddenly in danger of being wiped out.
Ilang taon ka nga, ate?
33 po.
33.
Now that restrictions have eased, Mafil has been distributing birth control pills to 4 villages.
So, ilan na po yung anak mo ngayon?
Hello. Pagkapanganak ko po sa bunso ko, nagpills ako. Nagtuloy-tuloy. Kaso po, nung nawalan na rin po ako ng iinumin, hindi na rin po kasi nakaikot yung mga tagalikhaan eh. Kasi nga po, bawal nang lumabas. Natakot po ako na baka mabuntis na naman ako. Kaya kailangan ko po talaga yung pills.
Malaki ang papel ng lalaki. Ang papel nila dito, maunawaan nila kung bakit ayaw makipagtalik ng babae dahil sa sitwasyon ng pandemic, walang access ng family planning. Kung magsisex kayo, pwede akong mabuntis. Pag nagbuntis, gagastos pa talaga tayo ng ganito. Walang pagkain, lalo na kapag nawalan ka ng trabaho.
Sinabihan po ako nung tumadrona sa bahay na delikado na nga daw po kasi nga daw panipis na yung mattress
Oo.
ko.
Pero ang the best kasing family planning sa'yo, te, IUD.
Lifetime po ba yung IUD?
Hanggang 12 years mabisa. So, yun yung the best na yung IUD.
Despite the offer of an intrauterine device, or IUD, free of charge, Hershey decided against getting one. This after her friend warned her about the risk of developing ovarian cysts from IUDs. Hershey plans to rely on government-sponsored stocks of contraceptive pills, despite not knowing if there will be regular deliveries as and when there are lockdowns.
Ayoko na talaga magbuntis. Ang hirap na kasi nga, ang dami na nila. Hindi natin, walang nakakaalam kung hanggang kailan tong pandemya na to.
For some women, backstreet abortionists are heaven sent. Desperation and ignorance force women to put their faith and their lives in the hands of those they barely know. In the Philippines, all abortions are illegal. And in this staunchly Catholic nation, it's also widely seen as a sin. But driven underground, backstreet abortions remain as popular as ever. After months of lockdown with her husband and no access to contraception, Mary Jane has been left with an unwanted pregnancy. She feels her only way out is to rely on Marika to help her abort.
Iyaano ko na sa kanila yung gamot, tapos inumin para madaling tumalab. Mabilis ba siyang tumalab?
According to one study, for every month in community quarantine, induced abortion cases are likely to soar by an additional 17,000.
Naano po yung pandemic na, di ba nawalan po ng pasok. Bagay parang pangalawa lang nila. No, ayaw nilang ituloy, ganun.
Mary Jane takes a handful of pills from the midwife, Marika. These are cytotec. They're abortion pills containing the banned drug misoprostol. After the drug is consumed, Marika will administer pincer strokes on Mary Jane's belly. These will crush the 3-month-old fetus.
Masakit daw po. Pagka po humilab na yung tiyan niya, dire-diretso na po yun, duguin na po siya. Saglit lang po yun kung madali lang po siyang tabla ng gamot. Minuto lang po.
After a few minutes, Mary Jane starts to bleed.
Kinakausap ko naman po, ikaw ba desidido ka sa sarili mo na talagang gusto mong ilaglag yan? Sinasabi naman po sa akin ang dahilan. Kung sigurado ka ba? Sigurado naman po.
Sabi ko, pahilot ako yung gano'n. Kasi hindi ko na kaya. Pinisil niya, tapos inanuan niya ng gamit. Ayun, tiyan ko. Tapos yun, halos bumaksak na nga ako yun. Dahil sobrang sakit. Tsaka nung dinugangan na ako ng dinugo. Doon na lumabas yung bata.
Later, Mary Jane's friend will help her bury her 3-month-old fetus in a shallow grave near her house.
Induced abortions in the time of pandemic, basically it boils down to poverty. Of course, forced sex sometimes, incest, rape. For those who don't have access to post-abortion care, it's very dangerous for these women. These women who had illegal abortions usually can have hemorrhage. Their uterus might be taken out unnecessarily because of the infection. Or worse, due to hemorrhage, they can die of the illegal abortion done on them.
For those who have no means for an illegal abortion, there is another option. Sell the baby. In the Philippines, unborn or newborn babies are being traded under the guise of adoption. Social media is rife with posts from expectant mums looking to give up their baby and couples looking to adopt. Undercover Asia puts up a plea on Facebook to appeal for a baby to adopt. Within a week, we have 2 responses from so-called B-moms or birth mothers. We arranged to meet one of them. She's 6 months pregnant, but already prepared to sell her child.
Wala pa akong check-up niya tsaka ultrasound.
Ilang buwan na yung anak mo?
Ano?
Alam ng tatay na gusto mong ipaampon?
Hindi niya po alam.
Bakit hindi niya alam?
Wala na po kami matagal na.
Anong gusto mo mangyari?
Pag ano lang po, pagtapos ko pag nanganak na po, kahit mga 5 lang po kailangan. Kasi hindi naman po kasi na-recover kami, di ba?
5,000?
Opo.
Prior to pandemic, illegal adoption has been really rampant. But during this time, illegal adoption has been through online. Basically, it's easier, it's more accessible, and it's faster.
The Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD, implements the country's adoption system. But since 2020, the DSWD has received just 4 complaints of illegal child trafficking.
We do not have the real numbers of those cases of illegal adoption. There could be many cases, but it's just that it's not reported to us.
Social media usually peddles unborn babies. When it comes to buying babies already born, Manny is the man to go to. He's a middleman, matching childless couples with poor families who have infants to sell. Manny organizes deals, including the price, time of exchange, and the fixing of paperwork.
Ako na po maghanap ng mag-aampon. Minsan 6 months, 1 years old, 3 years old. Pero may kunting halagang kasama. 10,000 o 10,000. Pag foreigner po mag-aampon, may presyo na po yung malaking halaga na yun. Iba nasa Philippine money, dollar na po yun.
Since the start of 2020, Manny has sold over 7 babies on the black market.
Ang timano po, pag nagkasundo sila sa presyo, ang timanong araw na yan, pipirmahan na po silang kasulatan. Kasunduan na wala ka nang habol sa bata na to. Ako po ang tumatayong testigo na pinaampun nila sa ganitong halaga. Komisyon ko po ay 2,000 lang po kada isang bata.
Through another middleman, like Manny, Undercover Asia is introduced to a mother who's looking to sell her newborn. The 47-year-old calls herself Nancy.
Ilang buwan na po yung baby? 4 months. Alam po ng asawa nyo na pinapaampon.
Wala na nga siyang asawa.
Ba't nyo po pinapaampon yung baby nyo? Lima na po anak.
Ako rin nagpaanak nito.
Magkano nyo po pinabenta yung anak nyo? 10,000. 10,000, papaampon mo na yung bata.
Nancy lives with her mother, who makes just $3 a day working as a garbage collector. The price on a baby would amount to 3 months of their household income. Nancy became pregnant during the lockdown. Endless COVID-19 lockdowns kept Nancy away from vital sexual reproduction health services.
Nanginayang din po ako. Sa totoo lang, ayoko lang din po talaga kasi dahil sa hirap ng buhay, hindi ko sila mabigyan ng magandang buhay. Siyempre, anak ko po yan. Wala namang magulang na hindi magmamahal sa anak, di ba?
Official adoption in the Philippines is a complex process that takes years. Pandemic travel bans, court closures, and stay-at-home orders for government workers have made the process even harder. Birth mothers, desperate for money or unable to add yet another child to their brood, resort to desperate measures, regardless of the consequences.
It could be physical adoption, it could be sexual adoption because there was no assessment done, thorough assessment done to really ensure that these adoptive parents are really fit to take care of the child and to provide for that child. There is the tendency that these children who were illegally adopted may also be abused.
Nalulungkot din pag nawala kong ganun, may nagpapaampon. Pero manalangin lang, sa akin lang naman, para sa pamilya ko rin eh. Makatawid gutom lang.
"14 days after Undercover Asia spoke to Nancy, she finds a buyer for her baby. They're a childless couple from Manila. She's paid $196 US, and the baby broker takes a 20% commission.
Alagaan lang po ng maayos, ganyan. Pag po nilang saktan, hindi po ako nagangad na malaking pera. Bayaran ko lang yung mga utang, makabili kami sa araw-araw ng ulam, bigas, tubig, mga pangangailangan.
Unwanted pregnancies aren't just burdening poor families in the Philippines. They're also putting a strain on a healthcare system that's already stretched to the limit by the pandemic.
Kanina po may nabanggit kayo na nag-pills ka.
Po.
So ano pong klaseng pills?
Trust po.
So nakakalimot po sa pag-inom.
As a result of COVID-19 lockdowns, 34-year-old Hershey Gonzalez has spent 19 months in confinement with her unemployed husband. With no regular access to birth control, Hershey is now expecting her 9th baby.
Nadagdagan na naman. Nabuntis pa ako. Siguro mga 3 o 4 months pa lang yung last.
Dali lang, te, ha? Gusto ko din ulitin yung pregnancy test, ha? Para po sure tayo. So, positive po talaga. Ibig sabihin, buntis ka po talaga.
Dito, sa ultrasound, lalaki siya. Medyo maliit lang siya. Nagtitimbang lang siya ng around 2 to 2.5 kilos. Sa totoo lang naisip ko, ipalaglan. Kaso, nangibabaw yung takot ko sa Diyos. Kasi buhay eh.
I think the trend in the number of pregnancies will continue. We are expecting more women to be getting pregnant because the environment is conducive for reproduction, and we will be handling a lot of pregnant women out of the lockdown.
Dr. Jose Fabella Memorial Hospital is one of the world's busiest maternity wards. This Manila hospital is known as the baby factory. Before the pandemic, more than 2,000 babies were delivered here every month. But when COVID-19 hit, about a third of the maternity wards were shuttered. Midwives, gynecologists and nurses were diverted to the front line to battle the surging number of COVID-19 cases.
Starting January, we are supposed to open up, but the Omicron variant came in, and we are again on a limited capacity mode. If it is already full in our maternity ward, they can no longer refer high-risk pregnancies to our hospital because there's no more space.
With limited or no access to maternity wards during the pandemic, it's a perfect storm for impoverished women like Hershey.
For those who have more than 5 children, they are usually at risk of having hemorrhage after birth because your uterus is overworked. And these women having 9 or more, they are usually undernourished. Most of them have anemia, have diabetes, hypertension. They also run the risk of having low birth weight babies, premature babies. The risks are numerous.
But not wanting to jostle with others at maternity hospitals, Hershey is opting for a home birth.
Sakit na ba talaga? May lumalabas na ba? O, hingang malalim lang para maano yung sakit. Mga anak na nga to.
COVID-19 has swung a wrecking ball into the Philippines' family planning services. It is likely to buck the Philippines' decade-long decline in birth rate, with an expected surge in pregnancies after the pandemic. Hershey welcomed her 9th baby into the world.
Siya na si Leon Gonzalez Gomez. Ligtas kaming dalawa sa awa ng Diyos. Dahil nga sa pang-siyam na siya, high risk na yung pagbubuntis pero ligtas kaming dalawa. Sabi ko nga blessed na siya. Bahala ko po ngayon nakapanganak na ako. Family planning. Kahit po implant lang po.
It's been 2 weeks since Mary Jane had a risky, illegal abortion. While she survived the abortion and escaped the economic consequences of an unwanted child, the abortion left an emotional imprint which she could not erase.
Dito ko po pinalibing yung anak ko. Masakit dahil ganun mga nangyari. Pero araw-araw ko naman siya pinadalaw dito. Lagi ako nagtitirik sa kanya. Kinakamusta ko siya. Kahit gabi, nandito ako minsan. Madaan ako. Ayaw ko naman sana talaga. Kaya sabi ko sa sarili ko, dapat di na lang ako nagbuntis. Hindi na lang akong binibigyan ng anak kong ganito lang. Ako nawawala ng anak eh.